Okay, we are recording.
Great. Well, you probably can put it on hold for a moment because we're not going to get started for another probably 10 minutes or so. Not to waste preliminary time on the recordings.
NVAA convention. Okay, we're recording this too. He also publishes a free monthly newsletter called Vectors for Safety. You can find a link on his website, gbenson.com, or ask me and I can tell you. I would encourage it. It's good. It's a nice monthly newsletter. And it's free. And Pilot's Light free. Tonight, he's going to share with us his presentation entitled Combating Cognitive Decline. I give you Gene.
All right, hello everybody. Let me share my screen again here, and there we go. You can see my screen, I assume, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Thanks for inviting me to your association meeting. I really do like doing these virtual presentations. Obviously, I'd rather be there in person and especially have some pizza with you. But the time involved and the travel cost makes these virtual events just really more practical. I do 1 or 2 a week. And if I was traveling to do these, that, obviously just wouldn't be possible or practical to do that at all. So with that, we will get on. Thanks for that nice introduction there. Some of that might even be true. Thank you. All right. So glad to have you on board for this very, very sensitive topic. It's a very important topic, and it's one that most of us would prefer to ignore, but it shouldn't be ignored, especially since we now know how to effectively address it. Research over the past decade, with the help of new brain imaging capabilities primarily, has greatly increased what we know about how the brain works. Cognitive decline is a part of getting older, just as much as the decline of any of our other functions. Can we prevent cognitive decline? Yeah, of course not. But we can take steps to slow its progression and even, in many cases now, to improve some of the areas that have already declined. And my slides don't seem to want to. There we go. So by way of introducing our subject, now they're going on ahead of me here. Little technical difficulty here. Let me try this again. Huh. Oh, we went too far. I apologize for that. Let's get back here. Here we go. And there we go. Okay. So by way of introducing our subject, let me say this. Most people accept cognitive decline with age, just as they accept decreased mobility or decreased stamina. The grow old gracefully mantra is frequently heard. But as pilots, we can't accept that. And we can't accept that and expect to fly safely, at least. As our cognitive skills decline, so does our capability to perform our duties as pilots. But we are pilots. We didn't become pilots by giving up easily. We all know that, right? So there's no reason to hang up our wings without putting forth our best effort. And no, we're actually not going to do any push-ups during this presentation here. But if you'd like to, feel free. Go ahead. Let's begin with a disclaimer here. The session is not intended to deal with serious cognitive decline or dementia in any of its forms. This is an awareness presentation only. It's not a substitute for medical or psychological treatment. Please make sure you put your FAA registered email address in the sign-in sheet before you leave, or on the computer, I guess, before you leave. Once I have that information, I'll issue credit by doing a bulk upload to the FAA server. Once credit is issued, you will receive an email from FAAsafety.gov stating that you received the credit for the activity as what is shown here. By the way, if you receive an email from the FAA inviting you to join the WINGS program and you're already in the WINGS program, that means the email address you entered is not what the FAA has set up for you. And if that's the case, just contact me and I'll straighten it out. And the Bright Spot is my consulting company and is an FAA accredited training provider. So your attendance at this program qualifies you for the Avemco Safety Rewards Program. Just let Avemco know that you attended this program at the time of purchasing a policy or upon renewal of an existing policy, and you'll receive the discount. The discount for attending any of my programs is 5% for your annual premium. But if you also do a flight activity that is, as they say, above and beyond your flight review or wings flight activity, you will receive an additional 5%. So if you watch this and you go out with an instructor and you do something extra besides your flight review, you let them know, and then you get 10% off your premium, which we know the way insurance is today, that can be a nice chunk. Oops. So let's begin. When the subject of cognitive skills comes up, aging pilots is the first thing that usually comes to mind, but we should note that physical decline and a likely increase in medical issues, including accompanying medications, also can be a cause for concern. But today, we're just going to focus on cognitive decline, which likely occurs in all pilots because guess what? We're human. So here's our flight plan for today. We will answer the question, what is cognition? We'll see what are our most important cognitive skills and functions. We'll take a look at our wake-up call regarding cognitive decline in pilots. We'll ask the question, can cognitive decline be slowed or even reversed? And we'll see what steps we can take to slow or reverse cognitive decline. And we'll see some special recommendations just for pilots. So now let's learn all the parts of the human brain and what they do. No, just kidding. Personally, I find that fascinating, but it's really beyond our scope here, and most pilots don't share my enthusiasm for that sort of thing. So please bear with me for a very quick psychology lesson, though. Cognitive skills are part of cognition. So what is cognition? Well, the APA, or American Psychological Association, says that cognition encompasses all forms of knowing and awareness, including perceiving, conceiving, remembering, reasoning, judging, imagining, and problem solving. It's one of the three traditionally identified components of the mind, along with affect and conation. We'll talk about our cognitive skills and functions, what they do, how they can be negatively impacted, and most importantly, how they can be improved. We'll begin with executive function. Our executive function includes the skills inhibition, working memory, cognitive shifting, updating, and planning. Executive function is a set of skills that simply helps us get things done. They help us to do things such as manage time, pay attention, plan and organize, remember details, and multitask. Executive function also helps us control our impulses and act in a way that is appropriate to the situation. So what do you think? Pilots need to have strong executive function? Yeah, probably so. And then we have perception. We're primarily concerned with three aspects of it: visual, auditory, and spatial. Now, the eyes and the ears and the other senses are only the beginning of the perception story. The real heavy lifting is done in the brain. And again, of course, perception is quite important for pilots. Then we have attention. We have focused attention and divided attention. Focused attention is the brain's ability to concentrate its attention on a target stimulus for a period of time. And then divided attention could be defined as our brain's ability to attend to two different stimuli at the same time and then respond to the multiple demands of our surroundings. Now, divided attention is a type of simultaneous attention that allows us to process different information sources and successfully carry out multiple tasks at a time. But we have to note, in reality, we can only really attend to one task at a time. The whole multitasking thing is really kind of a myth, because what's happening is our brain is quickly switching between tasks. And of course, the more tasks and the more complex those tasks, the thinner we are spreading our resources. So that's critical for pilots. Think about making that IFR approach to minimums: a dark night, turbulence, little ice forming on the airplane, and a vomiting passenger sitting next to you. We're doing a lot of things there at the same time. Or, of course, I guess it's just as bad if you're trying to land at a non-towered airport during a fly-in, right? All right, then we move on to memory. Memory can be defined as the brain's ability to retain information and voluntarily recover it when needed. It's what enables us to remember facts, ideas, feelings, relationships between concepts, and other stimuli that's happened in the past. There are multiple brain areas used in memory. It's very, very, very complex. And we have short-term memory, working memory, contextual memory, and long-term memory. And working memory is also included in executive function, if you remember. Now, pilots are constantly accessing all kinds of memory to fly safely, right? Memory is often the first cognitive skill also to be recognized to be in decline. It isn't necessarily the first skill that declines, but it's the first one that we may recognize is in decline. And let me add to that. That's not a huge concern if you find that's a problem. I'll tell you what the Alzheimer's Association says about that. If you can't remember something that you knew, in the recent past, and then in a few minutes, within an hour or so, all of a sudden it comes to you and you remember it, no concern. That's not a problem. If you find that routinely you cannot remember things in the past and you cannot recall them in the short term, then that's a good idea to seek some help with that. Okay, finally, we have our performance skills. Performance skills enable us to execute tasks timely, precisely, and of course, to continually reevaluate our progress and adapt for continually changing situations. Picture flying that approach, VFR or IFR, doesn't matter. Things are constantly changing, right? We're constantly reevaluating. The cognitive skills that can be considered performance skills are estimation, right? We're estimating that distance to the runway, processing speed, how fast our brain can process all this information coming in, recognition, reaction time, visual scanning, verbal ability, and inductive reasoning. And these are extremely, extremely critical. And a lot of the training that we do is actually focusing on specifically on our performance skills. Now, what's important to know is that no age is immune from cognitive decline. In the psychiatric community, there is no consensus on the exact age at which cognitive decline begins. But some research suggests that it can start as early as age 45. Other research suggests it doesn't begin until age 60 or later. Then there's studies that found that cognitive skills peak at certain ages and then slowly decline, such as the ability to make rapid comparisons, remember unrelated information, detect relationships, and things like that. Now they say some studies say that we peak at around age 22 and begin decline at age 27. So good luck with that one, right? Other studies have found that cognitive abilities remain stable until around age 60, and they begin to decline, most noticeably in memory. But now also brain injury, certain medical conditions, and of course stroke at any age can interfere with specific cognitive skills. We can get decline in some, but not all, right? And obviously there are substantial differences among individuals of the same age. So there you have it. We're all suspect for having it regardless of our age, right? Now, 20 years ago, 2005, there was a study that had been in process since 1956. It was published and it got the attention of aviation, particularly business aviation. The results of the study were rather alarming to BizAv since, unlike the airlines, there's no government-mandated retirement age. Just an aside, when that came out in 2005, I was the human factors guy on the NBAA safety committee, and it produced a very busy time for me and a few lucrative consulting contracts also. The attention getter was the Seattle longitudinal study conducted Dr. K. Warner Shea, University of Washington, Seattle. Purpose, look for trends in cognitive decline with age. Now, the study was begun in 1956, and it was repeated at 7-year intervals until 2004. It involved more than 6,000 participants in all, and 50 of the original subjects from 1956 participated in each of the interval studies. It measured 6 cognitive skills against the age of the study subjects. Now, just look at the graph you're seeing there for the concept, and don't get into the weeds on the math and all that, okay? The eye-opener was here. Notice the rapid start to decline at about age 60, right? But then look what happens at age 67. It gets even steeper, right? Okay. Scary. The fact has been especially noted, like we said, in business aviation and also, well, the rest of general aviation too, with many pilots flying well into their 70s and some of their 80s. Now, some of you falling into those ranges, and I am one of those, have found that the aviation insurance companies have also taken notice of this. And there was a time, well, maybe 2 years ago, when a lot of the companies were refusing to write for anybody over age 65. And if EMCO continued to do that, I'm not trying to plug them up, I'm saying they continued to write, but for any age, but they were nervous, okay? And that was when they started talking to me about figuring something out because they knew about my background in psychology. So I did this a study for them. We'll talk about it later on. But here was a concern. Let me show you the next click here. There we go. We saw all these skills declining except for one, verbal ability, okay? The concern is that an older captain, think business aviation now, think of business jet, an older captain might be able to cover up mistakes with quick verbal explanations to the younger and less experienced first officer. This could result in a dangerous lack of awareness regarding the kind of state of the captain. And, that it really became a real issue. we wrestled with this at NBAA, and something that was proposed, which I thought was absolutely the wrong way to go about it, but they put it in for their members. It certainly wasn't mandatory, but it was a recommendation, the age 100 rule. And they said the two people up front, their combined ages could not exceed 100. Okay, that might sound okay on the surface. And recently, there had been a very serious Gulfstream crash in Houston, and the two pilots. The story was the airplane was a charter, Gulfstream charter, had taken off from Dallas to go to Houston to pick up George H.W. Bush, who was he was not a president anymore. He was a past president, but still pretty high profile, right? And they were late getting off Dallas because of a fueling issue, and then there was weather in Houston, and they continued the approach, and the cockpit voice recorder showed them being very confused about the instruments and whether they were on the glide slope or below the glide slope or whatever. And they were not on the glide slope; they were well below it, and they clipped a light, a highway light, by the elevated highway that they went over on the way in. The airplane hit the ground, cartwheeled, caught fire. The two pilots and the flight attendant on board were killed. No other passengers at that time. But because this was a high-profile flight, they took the chief pilot of the recently retired chief pilot of the company, who was 67, and the first officer was the current chief pilot at age 65 for the two people up front. And I said, well, wait a minute, these two guys shouldn't have been flying at the same time. And the reality was, I'm not sure that either one of them had cognitive decline. In fact, I'm pretty sure neither of them did. It's not substantially. I mean, of course they did, but not to the point they shouldn't have been flying airplanes. But they had two different avionic setups in their airplanes. And one, they've standardized this since then, but one had the speed ribbon on the left of the indicator, and the other had the glide slope on the right, and the other airplane was reversed. And they were switching. They weren't sure if they were looking at the speed ribbon or the glide slope ribbon. And, it didn't end up well. So I don't think this was a cognitive decline issue, but this was where the age 100 rule came from. But think about it. If you've got a 75-year-old captain, you now have to have a 25-year-old first officer. So we go to an 80-year-old captain, and now we're down to a 20-year-old first officer. And, it starts to get just ridiculous at this point. And we do have people in their 80s flying as captains on business jets, today. And, it seems to be working out. But they got rid of the age 100 rule. First of all, it wasn't enforceable. it wasn't practical, and it frankly didn't work. So now everybody's kind of doing what they can, and everybody, all the business aviation groups, a lot of them, a lot of the operators are doing things with cognitive skills. All right, off my soapbox. But good news regarding our cognitive skills. Cognitive science shows us that cognitive decline can be slowed or even restored. Now, medical issues are beyond our scope and are best left to the experts in that area, but it should be noted that some medical conditions or the medications used to treat them can adversely affect some areas of cognition. In this program, we'll address only issues related to cognitive skills and functions. It's not intended for anyone who is experiencing notable cognitive decline symptoms. Anyone experiencing notable symptoms should seek treatment from a specialist. Now, the last 10 years has seen great improvement in the ability to diagnose and treat certain areas of cognitive decline, and early diagnosis is critical. Concept of neuroplasticity. The concept has been around since the late 1800s, but it has not been widely understood since the beginning of the 21st century. And only in the past few years, neuroplasticity, also known as the brain's plasticity, is the brain's ability to change its structure and function in response to stimuli. The process can occur throughout life. It can involve the formation of new neural connections, changes in the strength of existing connections, and the elimination of synapses. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was in school as a kid and as a young adult, I was taught, well, once nerves are gone or brain cells are gone, they don't come back. Not true. It's not true at all. And we wouldn't know that if it wasn't for modern imaging techniques. It's a slow process, and we can facilitate it coming back. It's a completely different process than rebuilding atrophied or damaged muscles, but really the concept is the same. We're going to look at some things we can all do in the interest of our brain health and our cognitive skills. Now, do what you can. I know everybody has a lot of things going on in their life, and all these things take time. So any of the ideas presented can help, but nobody wants to make a full-time job of this, okay? We know that. So let's look at some first steps. First, sleep. Second, physical exercise, and sort of groan here. And the third is brain exercise. And the last is another groan, diet. Now, sleep is important because that is when the toxins are purged from the brain. During sleep, toxins are removed by something called the glymphatic system, not lymphatic, glymphatic system, which is the brain's waste elimination system. And by the way, the glymphatic system was not discovered until 2012. Can you believe that? And it was discovered, I'm near Rochester, New York, and it was discovered right here by a researcher at the University of Rochester. So most adults need at least 7 hours of sleep per night, but that can vary from person to person. And during the sleep, 79 hours is what they usually say. And during that time, the glymphatic system is working. When we sleep, our brain cells actually shrink. So what does that do? That increases the spaces between them. And that's when these toxins are basically squeezed out, and the glymphatic system purges them and sends them into the same system that cleans our lymph in our lymphatic system. It's a fascinating process. But we've talked for years about having to get enough sleep and fatigue and all those kinds of things. And this isn't the only reason we get fatigue, but I mean, this can certainly result in serious fatigue if the brain is clogged up. It's just not working right. Now, unfortunately, some people suffer from a sleep disorder to some degree. Sleep aid medications, both over the counter and prescriptions, usually, well, not often, present undesirable side effects and should generally be avoided if possible. Now, here's a biggie. Some sleep aids contain a compound called diphenhydramine. Now, both the FAA and the NTSB have said that's very, very impairing, and both agencies say that 60 hours should separate the last dose from the first flight. So any OTC medication you're looking at, look at the ingredients, and if diphenhydramine is in there, try to find something else that'll do the job for you. Talk to the pharmacist, see what else you can get without diphenhydramine. Because, when you think about it, the NTSB and the FAA are talking about flying airplanes, but is that really much different than getting in a car and going down the highway at 70 miles an hour? I think we need those skills in a lot of things other than flying. So avoid that if you can. Okay, before resorting to medications, check out natural methods for inducing sleep without meds. Just, do an internet search, tips for falling asleep faster or something like that, and pick a few that might work. Give them a try. Now, the brain needs lots and lots and lots of oxygen, which, of course, is delivered by blood flow. Aerobic exercise increases blood flow and therefore oxygen to all the organs, including the brain. 20 to 30 minutes of aerobic exercise at least 4 days per week is recommended. Caveat here is that, of course, before beginning any exercise program, it's best to check with your doctor to make sure it's okay. And I've been doing this for years. I can't remember how many years. I do a 30-minute run every morning. And, all year round, there are very, very few days that I don't do my 30-minute run. And it really helps to keep it. When you first start, don't try 30 minutes, but after a while. Okay, so 20 to 30 minutes of brain challenges at least 4 days a week is also recommended for our brain exercise. I know the times are adding up here, and it takes time away from other things, but again, do what you can. Now, a variety of brain exercises promotes neuroplasticity and can increase cognitive skill performance. That seems to be a key to vary your activities. They say variety is the spice of life, right? So here's a list of some things that have all been shown, and not somebody just guessed, but have all been shown to help with maintaining cognitive skills and helping to slow or at least reverse cognitive decline. While there are specific kinds of activities to assist the various cognitive skills and functions, it's best to engage in a variety of activities, 20 to 30 minutes a day, recommended for a mix of activities. Now, let me just another caveat here quickly. Some underlying undiagnosed problems can cause anxiety and agitation when you're doing some of the mental exercises. I'm not talking about, getting a little bit of frustrated, but rather a feeling of agitation and uneasiness. If that happens, discontinue that particular exercise, maybe all of them for a bit, and tell your primary care physician about it, because there could be something else going on there. Then what about diet? What you eat directly affects the structure and the function of your brain. From Harvard Health, I quote, "Your brain requires a constant supply of fuel. That fuel comes from the food you eat, and what's in that fuel makes all the difference. Like an expensive car, your brain functions best when it gets only premium fuel. Eating high-quality foods that contain lots of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants nourishes the brain and protects it from oxidative stress." And that's the waste or the free radicals produced when the body uses oxygen, and that can actually damage the cells. And Harvard Health recommends something called the Mind Diet, and we see that shown here. If you're interested, there's plenty of information online on this diet. And like physical exercise and brain exercise, if you can't do it all, anything you can do is helpful. Some people have dietary restrictions and they can't do all these things. My wife, for example, has diverticulosis. She can't have nuts or berries. So, take those right out of here. But you can find other things that will substitute for what they're doing for us. I find the last item interesting here, wine. And they specify no more than 1 glass per day. But I bet before they settled on this, there was some heated discussion going on, because alcohol is one of the absolute worst things you can put into your body regarding your brain and brain health, okay? But there have been studies paid for by the wine industry, but there have been studies that show that Always look at the study who paid for it, right? A glass of red wine a day can help with heart and some other things, not so much with brain, but they're saying wine. So I think the message they're putting out here is, okay, you don't have to give up alcohol or totally, but if you're going to have some alcohol, do it as a glass of wine and have it not more than one per day, I think is what they're saying. The whole alcohol thing, uh, the more I do research, the more I think twice before I before I have a drink of anything. It's alcohol is just not good when it comes to brain health, especially with older people. Now, in addition to all those previously mentioned things, specifically, what can pilots do? Simulation. I am just such a big fan of simulation. I have been for years and years and years and years and years. Um, but this is another way that it can help strengthen those neural pathways. A 45-minute simulator flight that involves routine tasks, plus several unexpected contingencies, which is what simulator training always is, right? Can be very valuable. You don't need a multi-million-dollar device for this. We can try to find a Redbird or something equivalent simulator nearby. If you go to, I'm not an employee of Redbird, but I'm a fan. If you go to their website, they have a simulator locator, and you put your location in, and it'll show you ones that are nearby you that you can rent or take construction in or whatever. If you can't do that, well, anyway, before that level of simulator is realistic enough to facilitate valuable training in everything, not just for brain health. But even a desktop device, or even something like Microsoft Flight Simulator, X-Plane, can be a big help. The most effective use is not just to do it by yourself, but to either have a competent flight instructor with you, or even an experienced pilot friend. We all know kind of like what we need to do, and we all know what sort of things can come up that we can throw at you. The thing is, don't make it a video game, and don't make it a challenge to see if you can cause the other pilot to crash or something. Just do it as a learning experience and throw some things in. And those neurons are really working hard when you're doing that. So it's a good thing to do. Less expensive option, armchair flying. That can be considered a form of simulation. Close your eyes, visualize a portion of a flight, maybe a short field takeoff, or a go around, or just flying the traffic pattern. Imagine all the controls, the switches, the levers. Simulate moving them at the appropriate times. This might not do much for stick and rudder skills, but it will exercise those neurons and their pathways. And other ways to stimulate those neurons is to attend safety seminars. Here you are doing that, right? Take some online courses, read aviation articles, view safety videos, even hangar flying with other pilots keeps those neurons exercised. And you folks have a pilots association, you get together, you talk about flying, I'm sure you talk about things, and that's very important. You don't even, any sort of exercise doesn't have to be drudgery, including the mental exercises. Just talking to people is participating. Now, not essential, but highly recommended. Take an online cognitive test. It will accomplish a couple of things. First, if you have any significant weak skills, it will identify them for you. Most of us have routine physical exams, right? We go to our doctor, even though we feel healthy and we appear to be healthy. The whole process, including having blood drawn and analyzed, it's to catch problems early when they can be successfully treated. This is the same thing, but doubly so. Cognitive skills decline does not present us with any warnings until things get really bad, or until someone speaks up and says something to us. It's long been believed that cognitive decline was a normal part of aging. There was nothing we could do about it. That's half right. It's a normal part of aging, but there are things we can do about it. Now, another benefit of taking a cognitive test is having a baseline for comparison in the future. Now, you may wonder why I recommended an online test. Isn't an in-person test conducted by a psychologist or neurologist better? Of course it is. But not very many people are willing to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars and several hours, and in fact, sometimes, a whole day or more, in getting that professional testing done. The online tests tend to cost less than $50, take less than an hour, but just make sure that the test you choose has been evaluated for validity and reliability. The main reason I recommend the online test is that I really believe everyone should be tested and establish a baseline. Everybody, pilots, other non-pilots, everybody. To be honest, I've been around pilots for 6 decades, and I know that most do not like to spend money. My hope is that at least a few pilots will be willing to spend $50 for an online test, but it's unlikely that more than one or two would go to the trouble to schedule a professionally administered test and pay out upwards of $1,000. And I include myself in that pilot group. I don't like to spend money either, but I think the online test is worth the money. And don't worry, I'm not trying to sell one to you here. Well, I kind of am, but I'm not. I don't have any financial interest in selling it to you. Now, websites offer tests to measure skills, and then they sell activities to address weak areas. They're not free, but they're very reasonable. It's important to choose our test wisely. Make sure you choose a cognitive skills test, not an IQ test, a pre-employment test, an aptitude test, or any other such thing. And make sure it measures multiple skills, not just your mental age. It should include a variety of activities, not just memorizing a few words or number sequences and repeating them back. Okay, here's where the commercial/non-commercial comes in. This is not an endorsement. I don't have any financial affiliation with either of these companies, okay? And I generally don't endorse products, and I certainly don't use paid placement. So this is not an endorsement. But here are two companies I've researched, I've worked with, and I like them. One is Cognifit. That's my favorite. They offer a sufficiently comprehensive online cognitive test for $49, okay? And if you go to their website before a holiday or something is coming up, they always have a special for $10 off or half price or something with it. And then for a reasonable fee, they offer online games and activities to support the weak areas that were identified in the test. And the other company that's good and solid is luminosity.com, but they don't offer a test. They provide, again, for a reasonable fee, online games, activities, and they specify which cognitive areas they support. But if you haven't taken the test, you don't really know which ones you need to deal with the most. Now, links to each of these companies are provided on the resources page, which I'll tell you about that and show that to you shortly. Okay. Now, whatever test you decide to take, save your test results. Print them out if necessary, but save them somewhere so they won't be lost the next time you upgrade your computer. This is a baseline. Keep it for future reference. What I strongly recommend is not any later than age 60 for the first test. Now, if you're over age 60, it's okay. Take it out now, anytime. But then take one, repeat it in 5 years. If you think something might be going on, you can repeat it anytime. But wait 5 years and take it again and see where you are compared to the first time, okay? And look for any steep decline in anything, because that could signify a problem. And then maybe 3 years later, and then after age 70, it's probably a good idea to do it every year. The test takes less than an hour. At least Cognifit's test takes less than an hour. You get the instant results. You can print it out. They will send you an email later trying to sell you those activities, but they don't pound you about it. You get 1, 2 at the most emails, and you can do it or you can not do it. It's up to you. But they don't. It's not high pressure to get you to buy the other things. But I think it's really worthwhile, and if you do it and it comes out really bad, just take it again, because we all have bad days. There might be something else going on in our life. So, because I do have to remember that is it's a photo, right? It's a stop action of one particular point in time. That hour that you spent sitting down taking that test, that's what your cognitive skills were at that time, and that doesn't mean that's what they were yesterday or what they'll be tomorrow. It's pretty steady. These tests are in psychology. We look for reliability and validity in terms of a test. Reliability means if you give the same test to the same person again, you'll get reliable results. They're not all over the place by when you did it. So this test has reliability. You can still have a bad day, but it should be pretty close. And then validity means it measures what it's intended to measure. And these tests have both been all the cognitive fit tests have been verified as being valid and reliable by outside entities, a number of outside entities. They've really gone through and they've done their thing. They have like 14 psychiatrists on their staff, I think. Anyway, for those who do not want to spend the money on tests or activities, there's still things you can do to help maintain or even enhance those cognitive skills. However, just like a physical exercise routine, it does require time. 20 to 30 minutes a day is recommended. And that is a time commitment, especially if you're already doing physical exercise regimen, that you be on top of that. But anything you do is better than doing nothing. And some of those things are things you probably do anyway, like crossword puzzles were in there. Maybe you do a crossword puzzle every day. Okay, there you go. Now, don't rely on just doing crossword puzzles, but maybe you've got solitaire on your phone, right? Well, do a couple games of solitaire one day, do a crossword puzzle another day, and you can switch them up. That's what's really important to do that, okay? Now, specific activities have been identified to address individual cognitive skills. And obviously, there's overlap, in which some activities address more than one cognitive skill. The one activity that appears universally is aerobic exercise. So again, I come back to that. You don't have to run. You can get on an elliptical machine. You can go to a gym. You can go to Y. You may have a machine in your house, but I just run. I have a track around my basement indoors. I'm not going to run on the road and get run over by a car. I do it indoors, and it's comfortable, and I get it done. And I put the headset on and listen to the 1960s music while I run, and it keeps me going. Okay, so my era. So in summary, we learned a few things about cognition, our cognitive skills, cognitive decline, and some ways to slow or possibly even reverse cognitive decline. I told you I would talk to you about our resources page. I'll see if I can bring it up here. It's always cumbersome to try and bring it up live, but there's a lot of things on there. There's the links to Cognitive Fit and Luminosity and all that sort of thing, but also it's a 32-page cognitive skills report that Avemco commissioned me to do a year ago. I finished it, I think, in August 2024. I think it was last August I finished it. And they're happy to, I own the copyright on it anyway, they're happy to share it. And you can download that in PDF format if you're interested. And it's quite in depth on all the different cognitive skills, and it relates to activities you can use to do that. And it's written from a pilot's point of view. It's general, but it's also pretty much pilot oriented. And there's the website, brightspotschools.com/resources will take you to that page. Or if you've got your smartphone right now, if you just you can scan that QR code and get that. So I'm going to leave that up for a moment. If we want to have any discussion about anything, I think my camera is on, and I'll just move this out of the way. Always a fight to get my screen where it needs to be here, but anyway, bear with me. Well, I'm not seeing you folks for some reason, but that's okay. There we go. I found you. I use 4 monitors, and things go by the wayside. There we go. Now I got to bring you back over here again. Yay, there we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. What questions do I have for me? Or is everybody asleep? No? Okay.
Go ahead.
Is there much research in reversing cognitive decline?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard it. Yes, absolutely. That's a big topic, reversing it. And these things that I mentioned will actually reverse it. It doesn't just slow it down. It's a slow process to reverse it, and you have to work at it. And you're not going to back it up to when you were 25 years old, but you can have noticeable improvement in it. In fact, not really related to this, but interestingly, they're now able to cure Alzheimer's through these brain imaging things. And it's not widely available yet. It's still, it's still experimental, but Alzheimer's is plaques and tangles in the brain. They can't do anything about the tangles, but the plaques, they now have a drug that's an infusion. And there's one woman who was a little past moderate Alzheimer's, and now she's completely clear um, of symptoms by using this. So within the next 10 years, I think you'll be seeing that it happens routinely, curing Alzheimer's. But all this imaging that we couldn't do before, we can do imaging now on live patients and watch what goes on in their brains. It's not invasive. We can watch what goes on in the brain, what areas of the brain are active, and where the blood flow is going, and all those kinds of things. While we have people do various exercises, both physical exercises and mental exercises, so we've learned a lot. We learned how it works, and we are making progress in it. But it's like anything else. We know that exercise is necessary to keep our bodies healthy too, but not everybody does it. So we have to. The research is there, but we have to go and meet them 90% of the way there. 90% of it's on us. So, any other questions?
Yes. Is there for somebody who is unable to sleep, your recommended 7 hours per night? Is there a remedy for somebody who gets nowhere near 7 hours?
Well, let me start by saying the 7 hours is rather arbitrary. Not everyone needs the 7 hours. If you don't typically, I think it depends on why you're not getting the 7 hours. If you sleep 6 hours and you wake up and you're ready to go, good enough. The job is done. But if you can't get 7 hours because you're working 3 jobs and raising kids and all that kind of stuff, then that's a problem if you're tired all the time. But if you want to get more, then I would stay away from the sleep aids, but look for some of the remedies online, and some of them, they actually work. Did that answer your question?
Maybe. Thank you.
He's sleeping.
Yeah, if you find that you sleep like 6 hours and you wake up and you're that's what I do. I can't sleep 7 hours. I can't sleep 8 hours. Rarely. And it's not that I set an alarm and get up. I could, I could sleep as much as I want to, but 6 hours and I wake up, boing, and I'm ready. I hit the floor and I'm ready to go. I know not everybody is like that, but the problem is when you can't get it because you're working too much, or there's something on your mind, something's bothering you, you can't sleep. That's really the problem. What else?
Are there specific skills that pilots should concentrate on as they get older? For example, I always thought that as you get older, the use of checklists becomes very important for pilots to use as they get older.
I would maintain that. I guess we don't need the screen shared anymore, do we? There we go. I would maintain that all our skills are important as we get older, and I'm sorry, I would maintain that checklists are critically important regardless of age. I use a whole bunch of checklists for everything, and always have. Since I was in my 30s, I always had a whole book of checklists for whatever kind of airplane I was flying. But yes, memory is something that we notice declines, and it's easy to forget the carburetor heat or forget to remove the tow bar. You wouldn't believe how many claims the BEMCO has because people forgot to remove the tow bar from the airplane before they started the engine. That's a frequently occurring claim, and that's an expensive one because usually it's a prop strike, and a prop strike now generally is in excess of $50,000 claim because you got to tear the engine down if there's a sudden stoppage. But anyway, I digress. Lots of things that we need to do checklists for, and memory, do that. But we should improve all those skills because obviously we can't have a checklist for everything. Okay. My wife was my checklist when we had an airplane used to fly around. She was always fearful that I would forget to put the landing gear down. I don't know why. I guess she just knows me from around the house and things that I forget to do. Okay. So um, whenever, as soon as were in the traffic pattern or on the approach, she would say, "Are the wheels down?" And then a little bit later, "Are the wheels down?" Until there were 3 grade, I could say, "Yes, the wheels are down," and point to 3 grade, and yes, the wheels are down. So now that we're not doing that anymore, I had her record into my phone, "Are the wheels down?" And that's my and when she texts me, that's what my phone says, "Are the wheels down?" And I know it's her, and I really get a lot of looks from people around me when all of a sudden my pocket says, "Are the wheels down?" Anyway,
Another sleep question. If you say 7 hours, supposing you get a series of 2 hour naps.
hmm.
In other words, a lot of men I know my age, we don't sleep 3 hours straight ever. So 2 or 3 hours here, 3 hours there.
Excellent question. The 7 hours straight is preferable, but 7 hours in intervals of at least 45 minutes each works. The whole thing of naps, there's a lot of studying going on that right now. There's actually some research that says that naps are bad, but that's definitely in the minority. Most of the research shows that it's quite productive to take a nap. If you walk into an FBO that caters to the business aviation crowd, you'll typically find recliners with noise canceling um, headsets available for pilots that they can take a nap. They set an alarm. It's generally thought that if you're going to take a nap and then have to be active later, do not go beyond 45 minutes on that nap. 20 to 45 minutes is optimal for a quick, pick me up. If you go beyond 45 minutes, you're going to need at least a half hour before you have to really do anything, because it takes your brain that long to get back into fully functioning. You're a little groggy and it comes back around, but it takes a little bit longer. But yeah, the 20 to 45 minute power nap is definitely, nobody argues against that. That's a good one.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
What is your feeling about caffeine in flying and having the use of caffeine keeping you alert?
Yeah, that whole thing is a fallacy. The caffeine makes you feel alert, but you are not alert. The brain isn't functioning any more rapidly. The processing skills are not operating any more rapidly with the caffeine. Generally, it's discouraged because there are negative effects, the up and the down and all that kind of stuff. I got into a big fight with AOPA a number of years ago. It was probably about 2003, maybe. They used to put out a newsletter every day, and they sold advertising in it. And there was an ad appeared one day. I forgot what the product was, but it was some sort of pills, and it was I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was kill fatigue or something to that effect. And the advertising said, if you take these, it said it eliminated fatigue. If you take these pills, it eliminates fatigue. And I looked at that. They can't be. Is it April Fool's Day? No. I mean, everybody knows it doesn't eliminate fatigue. It gives you a false sense of alertness, is what it really does. So I contacted them, and I didn't get an answer back. I had my 50-year AOPA pin, and I never got an answer back from it. So I contacted them again, and I still didn't get an answer back. And every day that ad was appearing. So I took to my website, and I put out a special email blast to my subscribers, of which I had about 6,000 at the time, and said, contact AOPA. They're not listening to me, and I got a 50-year pin. Maybe they'll listen to you. Well, all of a sudden I got a phone call from AOPA. So, okay, back off. And I said, no. And they explained, well, we need the advertising revenue. We're not going to turn away an advertiser I said, okay. And I publicly resigned my AOPA membership, and like 450 people along with me did. And the next day, the ad was gone. So I feel pretty strongly about the caffeine. Not a good now. I love coffee. Okay, I'm a big time coffee drinker, but I have my coffee in the morning, and caffeine does not keep me awake. I can drink 3 cups of coffee and go to bed and sleep like a baby for my 6 hours, uh, but I don't use it as a pick me up during the daytime. I don't have anything against coffee. I don't, it's not the best thing you can drink, but I don't think it's that harmful in the long run. But anyway, that's my caffeine story. It turns out these pills, all they were was caffeine. Not good to put that in your stomach. Ooh, anyway,
Thank
what
you.
else?
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? How's the weather on Cape Cod this evening?
Oh, Pat?
Gene, you mentioned somewhere earlier in the briefing about insurance for pilots reaching the age 60 plus. I
Yeah.
know there's some pilot colleagues of mine who have seen their insurance rates click up quite a bit once they turn age 69 or 70.
Yep.
Where does Avemco fall in that group? And have you got any other comparisons to other insurance companies that may be more
I
reasonable?
don't have any other comparisons. I know what Avemco does. They like any insurance company, they have actuaries that do all kinds of research and put a price on the coverage. And the reality is that let me see. The reality is that older pilots are more likely to have. That's not really true. The perception is that older pilots are more likely to have accidents than other pilots, and that is true. But the pilot population of general aviation is, guess what? Older. There aren't as many 25-year-olds flying around out there. If they are, they're working for somebody. They're not flying casually. Okay, so the statistics don't look very good for that. Avemco picked up a lot of clients when other companies started dropping them, but the other companies I think have reinstated that now, and Avemco is no longer the only company insuring people over age 65, but they are nervous about it. But I asked they have to be careful what they tell me about their claims and things, because that's not public information, and I'm not an employee of theirs. But I think I've convinced them to really have their actuaries take a look at the pilot population versus the age, and are the older pilots, really more accident prone. I'm not convinced that that's the case, that we've seen that. Now, I know one thing they do is if they have, I know if they have a pilot who's just turned 70 and they're insuring his Bonanza, they might try to encourage him to go to like a Cessna 172 or Piper Warrior or something that's a little less complex and a little slower. I know they've been doing that, and of course they use the carrot of the premium. Well, this is what it's going to cost you for Bonanza, but if you buy a Warrior, this is what it's going to cost you. So they use the carrot rather than the stick, but they're very much aware of the situation and the aging, and the more research we see on aging, the scarier it becomes. But I think for the most part, pilots are pretty active people, both physically and mentally, and that helps. Anything you do that uses those neurons helps. It's just like it's like your muscles. If you sat in a recliner all day, every day, you wouldn't be very strong, right? So it's the same that people don't use their brains very much. They decline much more rapidly. And I think for the most part, pilots are active. They're reading, and they're doing different kinds of things. They're learning about flying. They're looking at aviation videos on YouTube. You're exercising your neurons. You're doing those kinds of things. So I think pilots might be a little better than the general population in terms of decline. I don't have any statistics, to back that up, but it's just my sense that that's the case. Anything else?
All right.
No? Was the pizza good? Oh, thank you very much. All
Thank
right,
you.
I'll John or Pat can send me the information of who
Yes.
attended, and I will issue the Wings credit, and we're good for this. So appreciate you having me this evening, and hope you'll have me back again. I have a big program on landings. I have a landings workshop. If in the future, I have the 1 hour version, and I also have an 8 hour version. So I put a lot of.
We'll take the one.
Yeah.
That'd be great. That'd be really great. We'd love that.
Yeah. So
Good.
anytime, let me know.
All right.
All
All right. Thanks again, Gene.
All right. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.